I'm not surprised. I mean, let's look at the history. In the last 100 years, it's been proven and completely declassified information. They've been experimenting on people without their consent or will or knowledge. So let's not try to say, oh, my government will never do that. They already done it. Now the point is what they're going to do next.
This next story is so unbelievable, we didn't think it could possibly be true. But after receiving thousands of records and declassified reports from the Army, it's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
Lisa Martino-Taylor's life work has been to uncover details of the Army's ultra-secret military experiments carried out in St. Louis and other cities during the 1950s and 60s.
This study was secretive for a reason. They didn't have volunteers stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll breathe zinc cadmium sulfide with radioactive particles.
These Army archive pictures show how the tests were done in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1960s. In Texas, planes were used to drop the chemical, but in St. Louis, the Army placed chemical sprayers on buildings and station wagons. City officials were kept in the dark about the tests. The Cold War cover story was that the Army was testing smoke screens to protect cities from a Russian attack. The truth, according to Martino-Taylor, was much more sinister.
After enough time goes by, the truth either gets completely hidden or it gets exposed, but still nobody does anything about it. We have to do something about this.
I look up to the sky, can you tell me why? My song Cry Die is a chemtrail anthem which we are hoping will open the minds and hearts of people. I want to give them some info about this issue, and at least we can think about that.
Profiteering, greed, are these some of the motives? Some might say so.
Since the 1990s, people have been able to bet on the weather. Now, climate means overall worldwide weather, due to the jet streams, due to different influencing factors. Weather, on the other hand, is a local event. Weather modification programs are initiated by utilities, cities, counties, states, private individuals. Anyone can modify the weather. Just like when Hurricane Sandy came about, people know there's going to be damage in a certain area, and they can bet on that damage, and they can make millions. It's $1 billion worldwide industry, so that right now I could hire a weather modification company if I had the money and the inclination. I could have them enhance snow in some area of the United States, and when I did that, the weather modification company and myself could bet that there would be increased snow in that area during the time of our program, and thus I would make money.
By the way, Bill Gates now, on public record, is a funder into geoengineering programs. He is also a heavy investor in Monsanto.
There is a line of research on what's called geoengineering, which are various techniques that would delay the heating to buy us 20 or 30 years to get our act together.
Bill Gates of Microsoft has been funding cloud whitening experiments using salt particles to see clouds, to brighten them so that it would reflect more direct sunlight back to outer space. The Earth would receive less direct sunlight. But is he consulting with us when those clouds, water rains out and the particulates are salt? Is he responsible then when our rivers and our streams are salted up because of this endeavor to have these type of particulates in our cloud for cloud seeding and cloud whitening purposes?
What may surprise you as well is that Bill Gates actually owns 500,000 shares of biotech corporation Monsanto, the 90+% owner of genetically modified seeds in the United States market.
He benefits on the back end through his investment on Monsanto. It's the Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution. Monsanto comes in and they have patented a seed that addresses abiotic stress, and it's a seed that covers everything from apples to zucchini.
When I moved out here, shortly afterwards I put in some irrigation with a friend, and I started growing some watermelons, and they grew effortlessly. Just put the seeds right in the soil, the native soil, and they just grew prolifically all over the place. We had probably 25, 30 watermelons for about 3 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, it just stopped. That was it. No more watermelon. Tomatoes wouldn't grow. I'm pretty sure the soil has some problems. Sorry, can't grow watermelons anymore. Can't grow artichokes no more. Your chicken's feathers are coming out.
When most people think of Bill Gates, they think of Microsoft, they think of Windows, they think of the Xbox. They think of a man who has pioneered technology into our living rooms. However, there's yet another side to Bill Gates.
Bill Gates never get into politics, never talk about politics, nothing. He was just in the field of computer. But suddenly something happened that the Congress threatened to break down Microsoft in several pieces. Oh, Bill Gates, the richest man in the United States, was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but he saw the writing on the wall, and then he joined the Council on Foreign Relations, and just then the Congress said, well, we are not going to break down Microsoft.
Bill Gates wields great power through his investments. In the realm of entertainment, you have Comcast, the Xbox, and the Windows Phone. In energy and technology, you have ExxonMobil, Ecolab, Devon Energy, and Cabot Oil and Gas. In banking, you have Goldman Sachs, M&T Bank, and Berkshire Hathaway. And in the field of food, you have McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Diamond Foods, Walmart, and even Monsanto.
One of the ways that's been suggested to fund these schemes is through a carbon tax. This carbon tax means that anybody releasing CO2 would have to pay or purchase credits in order to keep releasing CO2, and that the funding mechanism would then go toward the deficit or go toward various things that would apparently or supposedly save us from climate change and global warming.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the Foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds. We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. We do need the market incentives, CO2 tax, cap and trade, something that gets that price signal out there.
Well, this is a problem because no one is talking about how these funds are to be spent, who gets the money that is collected. The carbon tax levied against people who emit CO2 would be against agriculture, energy companies, different type of people that provide power and energy or food for us. And they won't pay the costs. They're going to transfer the costs to us in the form of higher energy. They're going to transfer the cost to us in the form of a tax on us, all the people of the United States, if this is passed. Nobody is discussing the solutions. Everyone is discussing what the funding mechanism will be for various solutions which may not change the climate at all or damage the environment we live in. And so this scheme that is going on, whether it's cap and trade or whether it's a carbon tax, is merely a charade, and it doesn't offer any solutions to the weather events that we're seeing, nor does it address the ongoing weather modification programs, which NOAA lists in their documents.
It's government control of everything in our lives. Everything from the cereal you eat, everything to the air you breathe, how many times you flush your toilet. It's everything. And that's what they're trying to do, is micromanage how we live, who lives, where we live, what we eat, what we breathe, what we drink.
At one of the speeches that Bill Gates gave during the TED conference, he put a rather alarming equation up on the board. Essentially, this equation called for massive population control, without actually saying it. You see, carbon dioxide was part of the equation, and people were part of the equation.
So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
This was a multiplication equation. Now, anybody who's taken first grade math knows that 1 times 0 equals 0. 100 times 0 equals 0. So Bill Gates advocating getting one of these numbers down to 0 essentially calls for our deaths. Well, you can only have 0 carbon emissions if there's no life on the planet. It's an impossibility. Yet the ignorant people in the audience of Gates are cheering, applauding, clapping, and really have no idea what they're taking part in.
Ultimately, what the powers that be are looking for, what the eugenicists are looking for, are two separate species, a worker class and a ruling class. The working class gets fed the GMO. The working class breathes the terrible air. They drink the polluted water.
They used to call it the haves and the have-nots. It's going to become where your genes are literally going to tell them who you are and how much you're worth.
Warren Buffett, who has been described by the mainstream media as the most successful investor in history, is yet another one of these eugenicists that attends meetings on population control. Portrayed in the media as nothing more than a billionaire, an investor, somebody to be endeared, to look up to, somebody holding an ice cream cone or cavorting with Bill Gates. However, Mr. Buffett is instrumental in many of the things that take place in the United States and around the world. Warren Buffett is invested in both sides of the coin in many of his dealings. Here's just a small example of some of the things that Warren Buffett is actually invested in. From Lowe's to Home Depot to Visa to MasterCard to Comcast and beyond. Warren Buffett was one of the attendees to this meeting on population control that included Michael Bloomberg, David Rockefeller, Bill Gates, and even Oprah Winfrey.
Behind closed doors on this New York campus, a secret gathering of some of the world's most powerful people. Gates, Buffett, Bloomberg, Winfrey. It was like, well, it was like the Super Friends.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes.
Together with others at the meeting, including George Soros, Ted Turner, David Rockefeller, they're worth more than $125 billion. The new Supermen and Wonder Woman, the super rich friends, not fighting bad guys, but fighting for good nonetheless.
The oligarchy is not convinced by findings or statistics or a survey of the world that the world is overpopulated. The oligarchy has to believe that the world is overpopulated simply because they are oligarchs. In other words, it's a structural feature of being an oligarch. In the case of Greek antiquity, we have a very clear example of the connection between oligarchy and genocide based on the notion of overpopulation.